We've all seen and heard stories of impoverished children around the world, and we've all thought to ourselves, what can we really do to help these children? Luckily, there are families all around the world, just like yours or mine, that are happy to help these children through international adoption. While none of us might be planning families right about now, the time will come and I'm here to tell you about an important consideration you may have to make. Supply and demand of international adoption is increasing, but the current infrastructure in place is not able to handle these increases. The US State Department estimates that about 30,000 children are adopted between countries every year. And that, in addition to this, the Loyola Law School found that as of 2005, in China alone, there are still 500,000 children in foster care, and it takes anywhere from 1 to 5 years to actually adopt these children. In 1993, the Hague Adoption Convention was a landmark treaty set to standardize the international adoption process, and has since been ratified by about 100 countries. However, it might require the help of another international governing body, such as the United Nations, in order to fully implement and standardize the international adoption process. Today, I'm here to talk to you about what's damaging the quantity and the quality of international adoption, as well as provide some solutions to help solve this problem. By first going over a brief overview of the issue, this speech will show how various country restrictions can be fixed with the help of the United Nations to help enforce the Hague Adoption Convention and increase ratification and increase the compliance measures for international adoption. As of now, there are several unsafe and costly international adoption practices around. One case that is particularly shocking is that of Chinese orphanages. Human Rights Watch found that in the 1990s, nearly 80% of children died within months of being admitted into orphanages in cities such as Shanghai. And this is coupled with the fact that nearly 10,000 of these children were abandoned annually. So luckily, there are families out there that are willing to help these children. In the United States alone, Business Library found that there's about 36 couples waiting for every one baby placed on adoption. Unfortunately, the Child Welfare Information Agency finds that the average cost of adopting a child is around $40,000. This is due to the limited number of agencies that increase both the cost and the time it takes to actually go through this process. Now you may be wondering, what about domestic adoption? While domestic adoption is always an option, this does not diminish the necessity or the selflessness that goes into international adoption. This is a personal choice that people make, and they shouldn't be demonized for not helping their own country. So rather, this issue is one of access in international adoption, and this varies on a country-by-country basis, and that brings me to my next point. Countries that tend to have the most restrictions, as well as lack of resources, tend to be those that are not compliant with their national governing bodies. And it should come as no surprise that these countries also tend to be the most corrupt. Let's take the story of Tariku Alema of Ethiopia, for example. When she was a young teenager, she was promised a study trip to America, but was actually stolen from her family through a fraudulent adoption agency. On the other hand, we could go look at a story of Sue Ann Hibbs of Minnesota, who was eager to adopt 3 young girls from Guatemala, and after spending 3 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars on the adoption process, she found that she had been using a crooked baby broker and who had altered their birth records and actually bribed their mother into giving them up. Despite all this, prohibition of international adoption is not the answer. As Richard Carlson of New York Law School describes, as regulation goes up, so does the cost of adoption, making it even more likely that corruption will happen in the smaller number of countries that actually allow international adoption in the first place. Instead, we should be focusing on strong agencies as a facilitator in this process. It's important to note that in the Hague Adoption Convention, protections only apply if both the adopting and the adoptee country have ratified the treaty. That means non-compliant countries, such as Ethiopia and Guatemala, might be using the use of unaccredited or fraudulent adoption agencies. Therefore, the solution I propose is to help solve this problem by using the power of the United Nations to help increase the ratification of the Hague Adoption Convention, as well as increase compliance for the international adoption process, making it easier for all parties involved. So first of all, the importance of the Hague Adoption Convention should not be minimized. It has set a crucial and formal standard of adoption, and it has since its founding in 1993 by the Hague Conference on Private International Law, and has been ratified by about 100 countries. But that still leaves about 100 countries left that haven't ratified it. And one way to help ratify this even more is to combine the objectives of this treaty with the world's most popular treaty that has been ratified by 200 countries, which is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. This convention has very similar objectives to that of The Hague and has already seen 3 major amendments since its inception in 1990. So if the United Nations was able to convince countries that adoption was the next major issue, then perhaps we could see a new amendment on the horizon. This brings me to the second part of my solution, which is using the power of the United Nations to increase oversight and provide stricter standards to hold people accountable for this adoption process. One way to do this is to help establish accredited adoption agencies through the use of the United Nations Peacebuilding Fund. Since this fund was founded in 2005, it has given over $600 million to over 30 countries in the name of restoring peace and mitigating conflict. So if we were able to give this money to people who are children who are left in war-torn countries and have been left abandoned, this fund could help directly set up central authorities in these countries that would help to provide oversight for the adoption process in these countries. And for those places and countries that have already been known to have fraudulent or corrupt agencies, the United Nations has an International Court of Justice, or the ICJ, that could handle these cases. The ICJ has already been known to oversee international custody battles, and most recently, the finding or conviction of Congo warlord Thomas Lubanga for using child soldiers during war. As you can see, there's already countries and people and initiatives in place that are willing and able to help solve this problem. It's just a matter of finding the right organizations matched to the right countries, and from there we can match more families to more children into their new homes. Today, I've shown you the complex issue of international adoption and hope that you can take away some main considerations from it. There will always be children looking for more families. There will always be people who want to be parents. And to deny this right is a travesty for children like Tarikua or for hopeful parents like Suan who have been burdened by this process. By increasing the ratification of the Hague Adoption Convention, as well as increasing compliance through the power and oversight of the United Nations, these 2 components will be crucial to solving this problem. First, it provides accountability for countries that have been having, or through sanctions, as well as potential oversight and taking on of cases by the ICJ. Second, it lowers corruption in countries that have already experienced strict restrictions in the adoption process. And third, most importantly, it provides an opportunity, a safe and peaceful one, for a second chance for a child's life. Yes, international adoption is a massive global issue, but I ask you all this. If there's anyone worth fighting for, wouldn't it be your own family?